So, hello and welcome to the new world. I'm your host, Abhinav Sridhar, and today with me I have Shivam Pota, an aspiring filmmaker. Shivam, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Shivam Pota. I am a 19-year-old filmmaker, originally from London, but I've been studying and working in Singapore for the last, I'd say, 11 or so years. 13 or so years. And I am moving back to the UK to pursue filmmaking. It's both as a studies and a career. I'm currently studying film production at Arts University Bournemouth, but I've done my first year online due to the pandemic.
You're saying that you did it online. So, did you ever feel any issues with the classes? Did you ever feel disconnected?
I mean, it is, yes, there is obviously going to be a constant disconnect in some sense. I would argue my uni did a pretty good job, but also I think one of the main disconnects was that I was one of the only people on the course that wasn't in the UK during said course. Um, because of health issues and other stuff, I was unable to travel down to the UK to attend. So there was, and well, everyone attending classes virtually, they could still sort of meet up and hang out in person. And that aspect was entirely lost on me, sadly, due to that. And that made it a bit difficult. But also, I would say there's a certain draining quality to Zoom that has occurred in the sense that after a long time, long hours on Zoom, it gets tiring. And I think a lot of people, when they think, okay, if you can work from home, then they will unlikely to, keep their cameras on or get really engaged because people don't really see their home environment as a work environment. And I don't think that's still fully, it's still as it should be. Your home and your workspace should be two different places. But because of that, I do feel there is a slight disconnect in that, participation between students isn't very high sometimes. Cameras aren't on that often. In general, it's interesting, I'd say. But yes, there is a disconnect, I reckon.
Well, see, because even for us, or last year in 11th grade, we also had it like completely online. And I think one of the worst part of it was that, you just sit at home and when your videos aren't on, there's no one to supervise you or make sure you're doing all the work correctly. And I think that was a very big issue because, we didn't get to see our friends, nor did they get to see us. We didn't feel like sitting for classes and staring at the screen for so long. I think there's actually a term for it. I think it's called Zoom fatigue. Not sure, but I think
Yeah.
that's yeah. So it was really tiring, and I think one of the worst part of it was that you just never connected. And for me, I was doing 11th last year, so it's like one of the most crucial years for me because after 11th, 12th, and then it's university. So if
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with this, it's like all my grades will get affected by it, and I feel like I understand exactly what you're telling me. And I mean, I think one of the main reasons you go to film school is so that you can get hands on with the
Yeah.
equipment and all that stuff. So did you how much of a disconnect did you feel from the practical side of it? Because when it comes to the practical side of filmmaking, it's one of the most important things.
Oh, for sure. And that's one of the main reasons why I went to join that uni because of its huge practical, um, you know, courses and also its facilities. They have industry-leading cameras. They also are the rare unis that actually shoot on analog film, which is something that interests me deeply as a creative. So missing out on that was a bit brutal, but at the same time, they didn't do a huge amount of in-person classes or production classes for our year group because I don't understand the reasoning why. They were more focused on the grad films of the third year and prioritizing the final projects of the graduating year over, as well as the second year over our year. That being said, we were able to complete 3 short films during this year, but there is a limitation because I'm not physically there, so my roles are only limited to maybe two or three things. The roles I took on the first two films was I was an editor for both films, and on the first film it was genuinely a very easy time to edit. I could use the software I'm comfortable with. Yes, there was a big time difference, so I would have to hop on. But luckily, my teammates are very accommodating to this, and we didn't really work until too late. Second film, also editor, but the issue I had with working on that film was we had to use a remote desktop to edit, and using the editing software we weren't really too, let's say, proficient in. Avid, and Avid is industry standard, but the thing is that prior to that we hadn't had much training on it, and because I couldn't complete the training sessions because of my Wi-Fi connection being so far away from the computer I'm going to connect to, it was a bit of a struggle. But I think there is a strong feeling of FOMO, fear of missing out, when the teams you're working with are out on set shooting, and all you can really do is watch. Like, luckily, some of my teachers and my friends, they would call me on Discord, for example, and leave me on a little computer and let me watch them. Sort of. But even then, it's sort of you're not at all. You're more of an audience member to their filming compared to an active participant. On the third film, I had a much more hands-on role from the very inception of the project. I was a producer on the film, which that is personally, in a virtual sense, I found that a lot more fulfilling role, because there's a lot more people management, people work. Even the paperwork stuff I thought was a little bit more enjoyable. Not that I don't dislike editing. Editing is one of my most favorite things to do, but I thought because of how somewhat distant socially this year has been, the producing was a nice change of pace. I was able to collaborate with a fantastic director and help assemble a very, very strong team of filmmakers and creatives to help bring to life a very interesting story that the director I was working with had created. However, because I was there from day one and always, worked with the entire cast, entire crew, and really helped the film from the foundations, it felt a little bit bleak per se, watching everything unfold through a screen, rather than being there in person to meet the crew and hang out and really be there in person.
I mean, yeah, you said FOMO, like fear of missing out. I feel like that's one thing that everyone goes through, because even for me, when it came to online classes, we had you were here in Singapore, so that full 50-50 thing that happened. Like only half the class could go, but the other half had to go from home. And sometimes we'd have to go to the labs, and once we go to the labs, it was just the teacher didn't even care after some time. They were just like, oh, okay, they're online. Well, can't do anything about it. It's like that type of thing. So, I mean, that burn for the subject, that passion for me at least, I feel like I lost a lot of it on the way. Do you think you also lost at least a bit of passion, or that drive to make a film as a creator? Did you ever lose that burn in you, even though it was online?
I reckon it ebbs and flows, but that happens with all creators, I reckon. It's rare you'll find someone who always, is always having that sort of complete sort of fiery passion to admit. In the sense that the moments where you don't have your complete sort of fiery passion to make a film are the times that you can sit back and reflect on your work and sit back and sort of digest what you've been making and deconstruct it, and also think of new ideas. In the I think the small downtimes you have between big creative bursts are very crucial to sort of let yourself and your brain and your mind and all of your creativity just sort of simmer a bit, so you can essentially slow down a bit and reconstruct. But that being said, it's been difficult to stay motivated, especially because a lot of my classes will take place late at night. So because of the time zone difference between the UK and Singapore, I would be working from earliest would be 5-6 p.m. and then latest would be, I'd say, latest class would be 2 a.m. sometimes. And then even then, I might have project work or class work, or I might have to get an essay done that I wanted to do. So it was a weird one. And yeah, definitely there are moments of low motivation, especially around essay writing and the more written side of things. It's difficult to really pull yourself into it. Anyways, a lot of me and my classmates found ourselves working at like a few hours before the deadline was to hand in. I remember because it is just a bit difficult to motivate yourself in an online space, and it's not like you could just go close your work and just go to the library to work, because that was, because of the pandemic, that's not possible. So I do think in general there was a bit of there's dips of motivation as a creative, but what I'm always doing is looking to the future and looking ahead. So for example, once I go to the UK, I'm already planning a new short film. So that I will probably make, and that one is with me at the helm.
I mean, can you give us some insights? Like, it's on the podcast.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like, what is the plan?
So right now I'm shooting a film in Singapore. That one, and this one is a autobiographical-ish film that is somewhat, it's interesting. So it kind of chronicles my life in online classes and in this weird situation. But and everything from the film is lifted directly from things that happened to me. So in some sense, it is a bit metafiction, because I'm just reenacting things that happened to me. I'm the sole, essentially I'm the only crew on this film other than my editor Craig, who is helping me edit the film. But I act in it, I shot it, I directed it, I wrote it. My parents have small roles in it, so does my little sister, so does my friends. And that's a really fun project to make, but the thing is that because I'm doing it in between lessons, in between classes, when the demotivation hits in a lesson, for example, it kind of carries over to that as well. So it's been a challenge trying to finish off filming. I'm nearly there towards the end of the filming of the film, but it's a bit strenuous, especially because you're the only person making it. So it's a bit tiring. But I am working on one more project. Well, I'm working on a whole handful of projects at the moment. But the one that is really taking my mind up is a short film called Wrong Cool, or the working title at least is Wrong Cool. Now it's interesting because in terms of crew, it's the largest scale production I've done yet as a director. Essentially, because to make up for all the lack of on-set work I've done last year, or this school year, this year in November, I am directing a short film that my friend in America has written based on an idea I had. And normally, for some context on how I make my films, it's essentially I direct, I write, I produce, I will edit, I do the camera work and cinematography, the lighting, all of it, and then I will have maybe one or two people, like a production assistant sort of on set with me, and a boom put operator. And as much as I enjoy that sort of running gun filmmaking, it is limiting, because you're only limited to what you can do. So
Exactly.
while I enjoy cinematography, I do know there are people on my course who have a better, more in-depth knowledge than me in that. So, or especially with something like sound, where I'm actually not very good at, or I think it allows you to really push your ambition and reach the vision, or reach what you really like, the height of the project, because you have a group of talented people rather than one talented person. So with this, I am only directing it, which is the first time I've done that, where I'm directing a script I have not physically written. I have a good friend of mine who is helping out with the producer, and he's going to help secure some funding for it. He's going to help me cast my actors. And there's the money side, the location side, permits, the legalities of using fake firearms.
Oh wow.
There's a lot, there's a lot at play, as well as the fact that we've got a very talented cinematographer. We have and then we have a very good sound person who handle the sound edit, sound mix, and sound recording. We have a very excited, enthusiastic, and very good editor as well, who is working on the project for us. So, and also I decided that I think it's easy. I think delegation in filmmaking is crucial because it allows.
Yeah, that's 100%. It's teamwork.
Exactly.
You need to move forward as a team. You need to have a person heading you. You need to have a person making sure everything runs perfectly. And I feel like when I'm listening to you saying this, right, I can see that that filmmaker's view in
Yeah.
it. You know how to appreciate a movie, but you're talking about the work you're currently doing. But I've been on your YouTube channel, Shivam Pota Productions, right?
Yes.
So I've been on it, and I've seen your other work. Like, why don't you just talk about the other work? Because I found that phenomenal.
So, in addition to sort of being a filmmaker, I'm also a huge lover of the medium of film. And obviously, it's difficult to find a filmmaker that doesn't love film. But I'm someone that, because I started my interest in film, I reckon through film criticism and through watching films. So as I was growing up, my dad was also very big into films. He'd always show me movies, and then I would write little reviews about some movies as I grew older. Then the filmmaking only really started, I reckon, in I'd say 2016, 2017-ish. And before that, I was actually a really just a slightly elevated film fan for my age that would watch lots of films. But I got into it's quite interesting how I sort of got into the other side of enjoying films. So mainly criticism and podcasting. Essentially, I thought it would be a fun idea in the summer of 2018 to start a small podcast and discuss films with friends. And that's where it started off as. But it grew into something a lot more interesting. So I interviewed one of my friends and talked about films, and we discussed some trailers and movies that we saw together recently. That was back in 2018. And then around, I reckon, 2019 or early 2019 or late 2018, my old high school, had a couple of guest speakers, and they were sound engineers on like Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit films, Blade Runner 2049, a lot of Neil Blomkamp's work. They're on the new Dune movie, for example, Arrival. So they've done a huge. Dave Whitehead and Michelle Child are their names, and they are sound engineers for all these big films. So I thought, why not shoot my shot? And I go and ask them, hey, I'm actually a big fan of the work you've done and the films you've made and helped out on. But I'd love to just sit down with you and interview you, discuss and break down your process of how you work on these sort of things. And through that it sparked an interest in me. It sparked something big in terms of, I thought, wow, this, as much as I love to sit with my friends and talk and record our discussions on movies, I can use this to really delve into more. But around that time, I didn't have a YouTube channel. My YouTube channel started in 2018 October. And I hadn't started uploading my podcast on the channel just yet. I only operated on SoundCloud. But something interesting happened. In 2018, I went to the cinema and I saw a film called Venom. And that film...
Exactly.
Just...
I've seen that video. Yeah, I remember the title, Venom film review, and then in the the thumbnail, the worst film of 2018 question mark.
So what happened was, I saw Venom after school. I had some money, a little bit of money left over. I took the train over to the cinema, paid full price for my ticket, gave up a perfectly good Friday evening to see it, and I was appalled. I rarely get really angry about a bad film, but this set off a really annoyance in me, and I wanted to channel that annoyance creatively, in a creative sense. And I used to make YouTube videos back when I was like, we all did, when we were little kids, we all made those little silly Minecraft Let's Plays and all that. But this set a different spark in me. I thought, I want to get back into this. This sounds, this is interesting. Let me do a video on it. So I got home, had my microphone, sat down, and recorded something. And I thought, wow, I really enjoy this. And through that, I started delving more into film criticism through YouTube. I do write somewhat, like now and again, I'll write a long review on my Letterboxd page, which is a film review website, which I'm sure you can link somewhere. There is also, and also through that, so that got me more interested in criticism of film. And also at the same time, my podcast started. I started making more podcasts. Now, my podcasts are very far. If you've seen my channel, you'd see that it's a while between each upload. And the issue is actually, it is very difficult to secure a regular slew of industry guests, because one, they're in the industry, they're always busy. Two, it is just difficult in general when you have a small following to get big names. There have been points where I've had genuine big names attached to appear on the podcast, but them completely cancelling on me at the very last minute. And that is something I think no one tells you about when you get into podcasting, is that when you shoot for the moon and you crash, it's not fun. So I've had...
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, someone says, yeah, don't worry, we'll be there. And then suddenly, bam, the next day, I can't attend it. It looks like I have something to do. Can we postpone it? But then, you email them back, but then just no reply after that.
No, thing is that for me, I've had a couple of... I don't want to name names, obviously, but I've had a few people. I've had one director who made a big, one of his films went to Cannes Film Festival. His debut film went to Cannes Film Festival. It had Mads Mikkelsen in it. His new film hit Netflix recently. I mean, every time you get hit with a rejection, it stings in a very bad way. So,
you can feel it in the deepest part of your heart, like right at the center.
And thing is that it's not personal. It's majority of the time it's not a personal thing. But at the same time, you can't help but go like, what's it? What if it was something I did or said? So this director, what happened was, as a jokey tweet, I tweeted saying, absolutely enraged, due to exams, my parents don't let me see this film by said director. He replies to me, right, jokingly. So I follow him back and just start discussing the podcast. And then he agrees to it. We even agree a time and a day. I spent hours working on my questions, researching all of it. And this is someone who basically started off making YouTube videos, but really fun music-based YouTube videos, and got into film directing. And I used to watch him as a kid, so I had a genuine I was a genuine fan of this person from a while. So what happened was we said everything falls through. A few other times, I've had people just sort of fall through, or they will stop applying to you. That part is the worst, and when that happens, you don't want to, it kills your energy. You don't want to go and reach out to anyone else for a while, because you're like, it's not worth it. It's exhausting. But then now and again, you get lucky and you hit, you strike gold in a sense. So that's always been interesting. But my podcasting and YouTube work has led to other big things. So in 2019, I was a youth jury critic member at the Singapore International Film Festival. I applied and sent all my critic work, and they're like, this is pretty exciting. So I was brought on there, and I met a very great individual group of sort of very fun, exciting, lovely critics who were roughly the same age as me. So that was quite good to feel my age as well in that sort of field.
Well, I mean, I honestly don't know how to critique a film, and I feel like that's a talent and an art, like a different level. I don't think anyone can do that. But I mean, we also have to keep thinking about the future. Obviously, being a film critic, sure, it's a great thing, but how far can you move forward with it? But when I first spoke with you about filmmaking and all that, I think I got one question in my mind, and that was, how financially viable do you think going into the film industry is? Because the film industry is known for being notoriously hard to break into. And when you look at the future, do you see yourself making millions? Do you see yourself just getting by? Or where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 7 years?
That's a very good question. I'd say, firstly, with film criticism, it's something that I do on the side. It's a fun thing I do when, yeah, it's just fun to voice your opinions on movies and shows and stuff. But that is my true passion is making films, directing, and telling stories that everyone can enjoy. Um, I would say it's easier now than ever before to get into the film industry because while yes, there is more people trying to get in than ever, there is more opportunities than there ever been in that sense. With the new wave of streaming that's come in, high quality streaming TV shows like that aspect of it. You have also the independent film industry as well. It is so much easier now to get a small amount of funding and go make your movie and go push into the industry because there's a mix of you need to have your connections, you need to be lucky, you need to have your skill. Those three things are crucial, and I think also you can't just enter the industry as a director. It doesn't work. It's very difficult for someone to go from film school student and then boom, director like that. There's always a middle ground, sort of. The way personally is I'm also very interested in editing, and in university I'll be majoring in editing as well as directing. So that way, editing I can use because there's always work for editors, whether it be corporate videos, whether it be short films, adverts, TV shows. There is always a job for an editor to be done. So that is what I see as sort of always a backup plan, just in case. But personally, I do feel in terms of I guess you mentioned the money side of things. Stuff like if you get a job editing for like a social media company or just small sustainable editing work, corporate or adverts and all that, that pays a pretty good living wage where you can live independently and comfortably quite well. Now, my goal obviously is to make feature films. So at the moment I am toying with a few ideas for a potential low budget feature film I can shoot after university, where I wouldn't need a huge amount of money and a huge crew. I would just need a very small amount that I can, pitch to investors and stuff. Get a small amount, small crew, small cost, and then make that. That's the sort of goal, and then through that use that that sort of low budget indie feature to prove that I can direct. And then that way I'm entering the industry with a whole feature under my belt, if that makes sense. But I also think opportunity-wise, it's never been better because there is a strong push for diversity in the industry. Because that's why I'm moving to the UK, where I'm originally from. There's a strong push for diversity in sort of the British film industry, film TV industry, the American industry, because people are kind of fed up with the same, I guess, stories being told with the same people all the time. So
me personally, when I watch movies, right, I always think about god damn it, this idea is just being recycled. Because when you watch a movie, right, sometimes you just know that, okay, wow, this person directed it and I can feel it because same person, same idea, same thoughts. And it sometimes just reflects into their work. So when it gets stagnant, when it gets stale, I feel like it's time to have a maybe not a radical shift in the industry, but rather at least start getting some new people in and giving them some new chances.
No, I definitely agree with you on that one. The way I see it is, I think that's an interesting thing because certain directors have a very distinct style, but also some of them just make very generic, run-of-the-mill, mainstream. And I do feel in the mainstream film industry, that is a very prominent issue where you're just getting the same old stuff again and again and again. But the way I see that, the way to escape that is, but I think one thing is to understand is that the stuff that works, like Disney remakes or low effort animation like Minions and all that, right? The reason why they keep making it is because it keeps making money.
That is true.
Because
Yeah.
there's a sense of comfort in that, because it's so comforting to the studios that they can take a huge gamble on, let's say, 100 million action venture from a bold new director with a crazy new story, but they could use 100 million to make another Minions film, and they'll get people in seats immediately on day one, kids and families. But I think diversity is the way forward to get new stories. You need sort of, by diversity I mean all sorts, all kinds of diversity. So I mean racial diversity, people from the LGBTQI community, you need people from different backgrounds. You need, because film has always been seen as the art of the people, in the sense that back then going to a concert wasn't necessarily expensive. Art galleries were reserved for the super rich. The opera and plays and all of that, those were sort of, you know what I mean? Only the privileged could see and go to experience those. So
Yeah.
cinema was the art for the people, and I feel like it always should be the art for people, but it should be reflecting the people. And by only having the same rich, straight white people behind the camera, in front of the camera, in the writer's room, that's damaging for the long term. So the key to a sustainable future for filmmaking is diversity, and I feel that could be very beneficial for filmmakers like me, people of color. Because I'm British Indian, so I'm of Indian descent, but I was born in London. But through diversity and that sort of things, I can help get stories from people like me told. A very interesting thing someone told me recently, because I pitched them a film idea I had. I'm not going to tell you the film idea, but the main character of the film is British Indian, and there was a plot line with him trying to get to a relative's house to give them a birthday gift so they can, before they fly off to India, for example. And the person I'm talking to goes, yeah, but the broader audience isn't going to enjoy, isn't going to be able to relate to that. Or like, no one's going to relate to that. It's a very, because like, it's Indian, you're Indian, you mean, so like, no one's going to relate to that. It's too Indian. I sat there thinking, people like me,
It's
right,
like you're just thinking
around
right there,
the
what the
world,
shit is this?
essentially, the way I see it is, for years we've had to sit there and, because I found to be, no one can, like, it's not resonate, no one will relate to it. But I started thinking, for years, sort of people of color, people who are LGBTQI, people, just in general, minority groups, and most people sit there and relate to the same 5 or 6 white, boring male protagonists again and again and again. And, if I can sit there and relate to, like, let's say someone like Tony Stark, who is, couldn't be more different from me. He's a rich, white, extremely genius multi-billionaire, right? If general audiences can relate to someone like him and other outlandish protagonists, then there's no reason they can't relate to someone who is just like them but not white. Because people have been, relating to sort of stories like that for years now. So so I don't see why they can't relate to us in that sense.
Well,
And I think,
I know exactly what you're talking about, but the thing is, when okay, how do I frame this? When someone sits in a theater, right? And then you see someone, and you see like some random new type of thing out of the blue. Unless the first version of it is good, no one's ever going to try going back to it. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say you have a movie like Black Panther, which had an all black cast, right? Or
Yeah.
at least majority of it. So when
Yeah, essentially the lead cast is all black.
exactly. So when you had the diversity in it, and the movie was pretty good, at least in my opinion, from like a normal watching perspective, I liked it. So if someone does the exact same thing again in the future, I mean, I trust them. Like if this was good, sure, that's great. But if someone comes out with a bad movie for like the first iteration of something, I feel like that just spoils the mood of everything.
I think that's also partly due to the industry right now. So back then, back in, let's say, the 70s, 80s, you would have filmmakers take big risks, and even if they don't pay off, studios will still go again one more time, because the thing is that because they didn't have anything else. But now studios have these big franchises they can just that they know will get the money. Thing is that I reckon Black Panther wasn't even much of a risk, right? Hear me out, because it's a massive Disney Marvel film. It was always going to make its budget back. It was always going to make a big profit. It was always going to be very profitable and very popular. Did we expect it to become the cultural phenomenon that it was? No, I personally didn't, right? Do I think it is a very important cornerstone representation? 100%. But was it a big risk? Maybe maybe if you say in the 70s, for a huge international film like that, yes, that would be a big risk. But in the modern day, where that isn't that something like that was sort of this, I reckon was like a bit of a finally they're doing this moment, to be honest. Less of a risk, but finally Hollywood kind of meeting an expectation people have been holding for a long time. But back then, if you the way I see it, and this shows the modern state of modern mainstream filmmaking is, if you look at a film from the 70s or 80s or even the 90s, right, a pretty bad mediocre film, right, from back then, and then you take a film that is pretty bad and mediocre from now, the one that's older is always somehow more interesting because they always take more risks. Because sure, if you fail and take a risk, you can say you've taken a risk. Nowadays, you have films that take no risks, turn out incredibly bland and mediocre and boring, and still, like, they make profit. Like, look at Venom, for example. That film was abysmal, right? It was the most studio sort of cycled, bland, generic action blockbuster you could get. But it made $800 million at the box office. So I think the way I see it is, I think diversity will allow us to tell more interesting stories in the future. Because you have a whole different state of people writing and making films and telling different and more unique and interesting stories.
Well, yeah, I think I get that. That's true. That's great. So actually, what we did before you came up over here, we actually made a Instagram post, like not a post, a story, asking how, like, any questions for a filmmaker.
Oh, okay, that's it. That's quite fun.
So we actually got two. Not that many turned out, but
that's not bad though. I'll take that.
So actually, the first question that we got was, can you make a good career out of filmmaking?
Yes, 100%. I mean, because people, when you think of film industry, you think, oh, okay, director, right? You think of maybe 3 or 4 roles: director, cinematographer, maybe a producer or writer. But you keep in mind, a film has a huge level of people inside, working. So, wardrobe people, production managers, accountants, like caterers, stunt people, logistics organizers, travel agents, musicians. It's actually a very, very expansive industry, and it is certainly possible to have a full-fledged career, because there are tons of non-creative, as you know, part of the film industry, like the budgeting, management, catering. You know, what I mean, it's so. I think it's an interesting question, but yes, it is certainly very possible because how huge the industry is in terms of what you can do, as well as the fact that it is harder as it maybe as a director or a DOP, but for something, but every set will need a caterer. Every set will need that. You know, there'll always be steady work for catering, accountancy, transport, logistics. Whereas you, as a singular director, you might not always be in demand. You might have a flop film, and they might not want you back on the screens. But a studio will always need its cast and crew to be fed. A studio will always need a nurse on set. So it's an interesting question, but I'd say yes and no. I reckon.
All right, and I think it's time for the last question because it's 8 o'clock as well. So this person actually asked a very interesting question. How to tackle creativity issues when you just can't get the perfect shot? What do you do?
That's an interesting one. Well, in terms of so for example, this idea of the perfect shot, I think one is practice. Just try again and try again. In a reasonable sense, don't spend your whole if you have a whole shoot day and you shoot 3 scenes, you spend the whole day shooting that one shot. I reckon it's a bit silly, personally. But I think sometimes it's interesting because I think a lot of filmmakers are perfectionists in some sense. In some regards, I'm a perfectionist. So to get that, I guess when you can't get the perfect shot, innovate. Filmmaking is problem solving. For example, the one shot you need requires maybe the perfect shot you have in your mind requires maybe a dolly and track to slowly move in. You can't do that. You have to innovate. What do you have near you? It's about problem solving. I think in general, whether it be coming up with film ideas or you're stuck on set, it's always everything in filmmaking is problem solving. So you have to have good problem solving skills to be a good creative person, I reckon.
I think that's there for every industry. You can't. I don't think you can ever move forward without problem solving because I think that's just life, and life is problem solving. You have a problem, you solve it, you move forward. That's all. But I think that's mainly there in the filmmaking industry because you have a lot of stuff to keep in mind like budget, time, sets, and everything like that. So, yeah.
I think
So
especially with coming up with ideas and creativity, sometimes you can sit there and toil over an idea or think of something for hours, nothing comes. Then out of nowhere, just about you go to bed, you get hit with a sort of whoa idea. But often no idea will come out of the blue. Always something that you've experienced or that you've seen or you've subconsciously, everything you do will build up back here, and then they'll kind of drip feed into your ideas and slowly come back out. So I think that's just how I sort of see it.
all right, and I think just to end it off, from an aspiring filmmaker's perspective, or from your view, what is your advice to other aspiring filmmakers? What do you think they should do to move forward?
I think one thing I've noticed, and this is something I've came to a realization fairly recently, is you have to watch a huge. I reckon you can't be a good filmmaker if you don't watch films. It may sound very obvious, but I've encountered people. But I think when I mean watch films, I don't just mean watch the same set of films, the same kind of films. You should push yourself to explore a big variety of what you watch. And because it is easy to just sort of slip into that little groove and watch American action comedies and comedy films and superhero films and all that again and again and again. Because as you can see, I'm a big fan of that sort of thing. Don't get me wrong, but it is very important to consume a wide variety of cinema. By that I mean, don't completely cancel out the mainstream big budget, because that's what everyone, you know what I mean? That's what everyone enjoys. So you have to be in tune with all that. But also, watch films that are made by first-time directors. Watch films that are made on very low budgets. Watch films that are made in different languages to yours, different cultures. Watch older films. Watch films that have got tiny releases. Watch as much as you can and cast a very wide net, because all of that will subconsciously influence what you make, in my opinion. And I've noticed, if you only consume an echo, sort of, let's say, you only watch American mainstream mediocre blockbuster films, right? Then all you really want to make, or all you'll really make, is that, because it ends up like an echo chamber. You only watch those sort of films, so you'll only your filmic language will only restricted to those sort of films. The world of cinema is an absolutely huge, expansive place, filled with so many ideas and interesting filmmaking techniques that watching them and watching a variety is so rewarding, because it will influence what you think as a filmmaker, it will influence what you make, and it will influence your worldview.
I mean, at this point, after listening to you, I probably just want to end up becoming a filmmaker. I mean, you just have that insight. But I think this is perfectly fine for today. And I hope, I love talking to you. I hope you also felt the same way.
Thank you. It's
And
very fun. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
so, thank you so much for being here. And it's been a pleasure talking with you. And this is Welcome to the New World. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks for having me.